evening and welcome to Press Box. My name is Lisa Bulley and I'll be with you for the next 30 minutes. The hosts tonight are Ty Reynolds and Jay Marcks.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, you guys?
Yeah.
What a weekend in sports, huh?
Yeah, pretty big.
Before we get started, I want to remind the viewers at home that this is a live show, and if you'd like to call in with any comments or questions, the phone number is 873-6713. Okay, so let's start with the Georgia Dogs. What happened?
Ty, what happened in this game?
Well, first of all, like I said last week, don't let that 40-14 game against Clemson fool you. That Clemson team was terrible and was so bad it could make Georgia look good. Now here it is, you come against a team like Vanderbilt, who last week I thought that the 20-point spread favored Georgia was too much. Well, obviously it was. This game wasn't even close. And I mean, Ray Goff, he has no defensive lineman. He has no defense whatsoever. He has been there 6 years, and all he has done is just decimate a big-time top 20 program into a laughingstock. There used to be times where teams would dread going into Sanford Stadium and play, and now there's teams just signing up to play Georgia without returning a trip. One team is Louisville and Howard Schnellenberger. That's a club that may come in there in the near future where they've offered to come in for one game and no return trip, because this is a game with Ray Goff being at Georgia where they can get a win and get notoriety. This team is not good, and Ray Goff is the man responsible for this. I think that if anyone else should share the responsibility with him is Vince Dooley, but he has been there 6 years. There's no defense. It's the head coach's fault.
I don't know. I think it's Marion Campbell's fault. I know Ray has turned the defense over to him this year, and so, I know you like to blame Ray for everything in this program, Ty.
Well, he's the head coach.
I know he is.
Well, how is this going to affect his job?
Which one?
Ray? How is this going to affect Ray Goff's job?
I think he's if he at the end of the year, if they lose another game, if you look at their losses, Tennessee and Alabama and this last game, they lost on the defensive side of the football. There were no adjustments made, and I heard there were people in the crowd yelling at Ray, hey, they're going to run this time. I mean, they handed the ball off 100 times, and there were no adjustments made. The defensive linebackers didn't come up. It's incredible how the defense has blown these 3 games. So I'm saying that Ray's job will probably be okay if at the end of the year he goes, we made a big mistake, and fire Marion Campbell and bring another defensive coordinator in here. Everyone will go, well, let's try it again one more year. And I think he's going to be given one more year.
Jay, he's gone. I'm telling you. Now this team has set a real big low. They weren't at this low last year, I think. Well, they were this low last year after they lost to Arkansas at home. But this is a Vanderbilt team that scored 34 points against Cincinnati and 35 against Wake Forest. So what that's telling me is that these other smaller teams have a better defense than Georgia does, which is absolutely absurd. I think Goff is gone, and I think some of the replacements that Georgia's looking at is, of course, the main name, Mack Brown out of North Carolina. Also, now everyone has jumped on the Sonny Lubick bandwagon out of Colorado State. Where did you first hear his name? I think you heard it here first.
Yeah. Ty, you said it first.
I've been wanting this man at Georgia since the beginning of the year. And then there's also an NFL offensive coach, Ray Sherman, who's a candidate. He used to be a Georgia assistant. And of all things, I've heard Pat Dye wants to get back into coaching. If Georgia ever thought of hiring him at all, would be a major mistake because he's got a real tainted record right now with the scandal over there at Auburn.
Hey, the word on the street says that I think Pat Dye's been seen with Barbara Dooley at some function. So is that where you're getting your information from, Ty? Is it you go out with the AD's wife and then you get in line for the coaching job?
I'll tell you what. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad time to go out with the athletic director's wife. I bet she's got a lot of money.
Well, Barbara, if you're watching out there, our number's 873-6713. Ty wants to get in line for that job.
I want to ask you, Ty, speaking of that scandal at Auburn, Texas A&M, and Washington, they're all serving out their probation. Do you think that they should be considered at all?
Well, one thing that comes into my mind is that it pays to cheat. I mean, these guys are kicking everybody's butt. Yeah. Auburn and Washington and Texas A&M, I think they should be considered just simply because other teams have to play them. And I like to know how good they are. Yeah, I think they should be considered. What I think should happen to these teams that cheat and get caught is that they should not get bowl money from their conference. They should not get television money from their conference. I think they should be hitting the pocketbook, and that's what is happening here. And I would like to see the NCAA make those types of changes. But to answer your question, I think they should be considered because the other teams do have to play them.
Not just that, I think it's a shame that the whole school and the players have to suffer for what's going on. But
Well, I think in Auburn's case, they deserve to suffer. But those other two schools, hey, well, let's have pity on them.
Well, the boosters had a lot to do with this, so no, they should suffer.
Well, the thing is that these jerks that
heart.
run the bowls have tried to rig it up so where they can pick the teams that are going to be in the top 4 at the end of the year. And these 3 teams right here can throw a big kink in it because they can't go to a bowl game. Yet, conceivably, Texas A&M and Auburn could finish undefeated, which will really screw up the bowl picture. And then Washington could finish like 10-1 and be locked out of the Rose Bowl in a match with Penn State or a team like that, for the national championship because they're also on probation. So you got these guys that have, out of one side of their mouth, they're saying, oh, we need to protect the student athletes. We can't have a playoff system. We got to, keep the bowls the way they are. Okay, and then out of the other side of the mouth, they're saying, hey, well, we need to rig the polls so that the top 4 teams can play each other. And it's just so ridiculous because all the other divisions, 1AA, Division III, they all have student athletes, and they all play in tournaments, and it doesn't affect the student athlete. It's just a money thing, and the bowl people are jerks. They're greedy. They're money grubbers. They want, they want to try and rig it, like I said. And to tell you the truth, it's not going to work out this year. Not with Penn State on a roll, and not with these 3 teams you mentioned being in the top 10 in the country. So there goes your bowl coalition, Ty.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, let's switch over to Georgia Tech now. Why are they still winless in the ACC?
Because they're not good. It's plain and simple.
However, they are favored to win a game this weekend.
Figure
that out.
Their coach is not good. Their players aren't very good. They have no defensive line. Again, you saw a Virginia team come in there. What are the average, about 5-6 yards a carry? I know they averaged over 5 yards a carry on them. When your defense gives up 5 yards a carry, I got news for you. You're going to lose the football game. You just can't do that. Georgia gave up a ton of yards on the ground. They got their butts kicked.
They probably gave up about 7 yards a carry, didn't they?
It wouldn't surprise me. Look at that man on the sideline. By the way, when you look at Ray Goff, here it is. The guy is 2-2 against DiNardo ever since he came to Vanderbilt. I wonder if DiNardo's got a 500 record against any other coach in the Southeastern Conference. But good old Ray, I guess he creates a first for everyone.
Speaking of Ray Gump, I always expect him to say, life is like a spear of grass in your mouth. How many times have you seen him reach down and pick up some grass and chew on it while all his coaches are going, what are we doing now?
Well, I don't know why we just don't give him a pair of overalls and a straw hat and tell him to go barefooted.
Well, wait, I have to disagree with something you said about Tech. I don't think their coaches are that bad. I think
the head coach. I was talking about the head coach.
Nah, he's
not
that bad of a coach.
I think Bill Lewis is a nice man. The players like him, but I don't think he is that good of a coach.
Nah, he's a fine coach. We touched on it early in the year. They had no depth going into the season. Then they got a bunch of people hurt. And Ty, a couple weeks ago, you said, hey, they're going to play 19, 18-year-old freshmen on the line, and they're playing against men, and they're just getting blown out. And that's why they can't stop anybody on a running play. And that's also why they can't move the ball on the ground. Their offensive line, they got one All-American guy, and then the rest of them are these young guys that are filling in for hurt players. Well, that's not really the coach's fault. And one thing I like about Bill Lewis is he won't call a press conference and go, oh, we're so banged up, we can't win. He goes into every game thinking, well, these are the players we got. Let's try it. Let's go. Shake the dice. Let's go.
If you're having to play young players, your program is the status of your program is not very good. Whose fault is that? I think it's the
I would
head coaches.
say it could be some sort of application process to try and get into a good school like Georgia Tech.
Well, then,
since we're right neighboring on their campus, we might as well give them a plug for academics.
No, I think that they take guys that do score around 850. They had players in their last signing class that had 850 SATs. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you have to take players like that to compete. I remember James Singleton coming out of Toccoa, had to go to prep school, and then he went to Georgia Tech after 1 year of prep school. Well, when he was on the General Constitution Super 11, he had a 520 PSAT.
Whoa.
Well, there's a lot
That's
of
around where Ray Goff scored, wasn't it, on his?
I don't know. Maybe Ray was close to that.
You guys, well, I think we got our first caller of the evening. Caller, are you there? Okay, you're on the air.
Hey, I think it's interesting we're talking about Tech. They supposedly won the national championship in 1990, and they've sort of just fallen off the table here. Probably quicker than any other previous national champ ever has.
Yeah, they have. There's no doubt about it.
Does that sort of taint their championship in any way?
No, I think it's definitely the talent level, like Ty touched on earlier, has fallen off. With the Ross moving to the NFL, I think that those 2 years of recruiting right there were just they were decimated right there. They didn't get hardly any players to sign. The program was in transition. Now, if they leave Lewis there for a couple of years, it'll come back. It's not going to win a national championship, but they'll come back around if they allow him to run that program for a couple of years.
Yeah, but you don't think that's going to happen, though, do you?
No.
No, I don't think so either. I think he's gone after this year also.
All right, well, thanks, guys.
I doubt that.
All right, thanks for the call. You know, Jay, he's only got one win, and that's against a Division I AA club.
The Catamounts.
Yeah.
Hey, that was a good game.
So, Bill Lewis, I think he's got a similar problem at Tech to what Ray Goff has at Georgia, and that is when he spends his last 5, 6, 7, 8 scholarships for the year, he gets players that I just think are not very good. Also, I think that he just does not develop players that well, and that's the same problem in Athens. They just do not develop football players at either school. You've got to have 45, 50 guys who can go out there and help you win. You need your starters out there, you need backups, and then you also need your backups to play well on special teams. Special teams is such a big part of college football nowadays, and you look at these two schools in the state, and they just don't have it.
You know what? I think you touched on there. Recruiting is a big thing, and when you watch Auburn play and win, and Tennessee and Alabama, I mean, they've got handfuls of kids from Georgia that are great athletes that played right here that somehow weren't interested in going to an in-state school. I mean, that's all got to turn around, I think. If either program, Georgia or Tech, is going to go back into a national prominent kind of program, they're going to have to get the linebackers from Valdosta and the receivers from Griffin and stuff like that, because everyone comes down here and tries to pick Georgia clean, and I think whether it's coaching or recruiting or whatever, somehow the programs here in Georgia are missing out on these kids, and it just hurts a local resident like we are. When you watch a game and somebody makes a great play and they're like, yeah, there's a kid out of Moultrie, Georgia. It's just like, well, he should have gone to Georgia Tech.
Well, when you sit there and you look at Auburn, when you look at the success Terry Bowden's had, let's remember, Pat Dye did not leave that school empty-handed.
No.
There's a whole lot of talented players over there, and Bowden's winning with Dye's football players.
And all those talented players aren't empty-handed either.
Got a few stakes, huh?
Yeah, no problem there.
Another thing that Auburn knows how to do, they know how to develop football players. When you sit there and you go against an Auburn team, you can always count on them being tough. And they showed this week what tough is all about. I mean, they went down there and they pushed Florida around down there in the swamp at Gainesville, where most SEC teams look at a place where it's impossible to win. Auburn went down there and found a way to win, and I'm a believer in that program now. They have found a passing attack with Patrick Nix. They've got excellent receivers. Frank Sanders is a great receiver. I think he's going to be in the NFL. And they're just tough. You can count on off-tackle plays where Steve Davis is going to be able to average 5 yards a carry like he did on Saturday.
I thought the interesting thing on the Auburn game was the fact that it turned around on Spurrier trying to score more points. He's trying to move up in the polls. He's already the number 1 team, and here they are. All he had to do was run out the clock. He should have learned his lesson from the Holman episode in the LSU game. But he throws it deep. It gets intercepted, and the guy runs it back. And then Auburn really, I mean, you got to give them credit. They drove the ball down the field and stuck it in there at the end to win the game, But they had the ball at midfield to do it. I mean, that cuts the field in half, and that was Spurrier's fault for calling some pass play at the end of the game when they were already ahead because he needed to run up the score and impress the poll voters. That's the way he coaches, and it finally came back to haunt him.
No, I think it was really typical. The quote that I like that Spurrier had, well, he had 2 quotes after the game. The first one was that he said, well, I knew Auburn had it when they accomplished that 4th and 10. Well, when they accomplished the 4th and 10, they had about 15 more yards to go. It's like Spurrier had no confidence in his defense or his defensive coaches. He thought the game was over with before Auburn scored the touchdown. I thought that was interesting. The other post-game comment was that, well, Steve, you've had Auburn come in here and get you in your backyard. Now you've got a week off. You've got 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia. You're going to run it up pretty good on them, are you? And he said, no, I don't want to run it up on them too much because I want to keep Ray around.
Get it back to Tech. Do you think we're going to see any improvement in the Maryland game?
They're favored. They're favored to win that game.
They're favored by 1. However, when I look at the Tech team, they always seem to make mistakes. Tech always seems to make mistakes game after game. Well, when I look at Maryland, they had a rough outing against North Carolina last week. They lost 41-17, but Maryland made no turnovers at Chapel Hill. I think that if Tech comes out here and makes turnovers, and if Maryland does not make turnovers, I think Maryland's going to win the football game. Tech can't afford to make these mistakes still. If they make them, they're going to lose, Jay.
I think this is definitely one of the old proverbial coin toss games. You can flip a coin and call it, and it could go either way. Tech really needs to win, though, because I think the kids over there really been working hard, and they need a victory.
Well, one thing Georgia Tech has done is that they've allowed teams to run the football on them. Maryland's got a balanced attack, passing and running the football. Florida State saw what they could do, and I was impressed with that outing that Maryland had against them. I think Maryland's got a little bit too much offense, and like I said, if Tech makes mistakes, they're going to lose. If Tech does not make the mistakes, I think they're going to win because Luganville does a good job throwing, and they found out that he's a quality quarterback, and he's someone that you can count on to get 300 yards passing. He may throw for 400.
Yeah, but he got sacked, a bunch of times.
That doesn't matter. If you can get the third down conversions, and if you have the good quarterback, that's all that matters.
Wow.
Okay, you guys, we have another caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
As a Georgia Tech fan, Luganville looks a little inconsistent to me. Do you think they should move Donnie Davis back?
I think that would be if they want to beat Georgia, they need to put him back at quarterback and run the option play. I think Vanderbilt showed that, and so some of the Tech fans I've talked to discussed that right away. I said, "What if we go back to Donnie Davis and Wishbone?" The only problem is that limits your offense. I think Bill Lewis wants to have more options available. Luganville hasn't really been that inconsistent. I think the fact this week Virginia sacked him like 6, 7, 8 times. It was like, there was nothing he could do. I mean, that's why he was inconsistent in this particular game. But I don't think you'll see Donnie Davis back at quarterback because he's a run-oriented quarterback, unless they really want to win that Georgia game, and then they'll put him in there, run that option play, and get about 500 yards on the ground.
I tell you what, as long as Ray's on the sideline, anyone's got a chance to beat Georgia.
Caller, thank you for calling. You guys, Penn State, they're number 1 in the polls. Are they the best team?
That's a good question. Personally, I like Colorado right now because they've beaten several quality opponents. They won at Ann Arbor like Penn State did. They crushed a pretty good Wisconsin team at home. And then they beat a top 25 Oklahoma team at home. They beat them by 38 points. I think Colorado's got a ton of speed. They're just an attack that is just the hardest team in the nation to stop. I think that's the most potent offense.
Now, I think Colorado's big wins have all come in the altitude where the other teams can't breathe. It's a big difference. Talking to people from Wisconsin, they go on the road and play, and they're fairly competitive. But halfway through that Colorado game, they all gave up. And what was it, 55 to 18 or something like that? It was like, well, they were just wanting an oxygen bottle. They weren't trying to figure out who they were supposed to cover or how fast Colorado was. And I think that's what happened to Oklahoma. I mean, they go up there in that altitude. I mean, we've seen it with the Denver Broncos before. And teams just can't survive, and they're not used to it, especially if you don't fly in and get used to the air, the lack thereof.
Lack of.
Yeah. And so that might taint Colorado's record a little bit, but I don't think Penn State, they come to play every week. They can play a Rutgers, and and they can play a Michigan. And they can play at Michigan, and they can play Ohio State, teams like that. I mean, it doesn't matter. Joe Paterno's proven to be one of the best coaches in the country, and he has them ready regardless of who they play. And they really impressed me in this Michigan game because Michigan got off the deck and came back, and they were going to win that game, and it just seemed like Penn State got around their man and went, hey.
They kept their composure.
Yeah, and they went, hey, no, we're winning this game.
That's a sign of a quality coach team. What I think is going to happen here, though, is that October 29th, Colorado is going to go into Lincoln and play Nebraska. And whoever wins that football game, I think, is going to leapfrog Penn State and go to number 1.
We'll see.
I think we have another caller here. Caller, you're on the air. Caller, are you there?
Oh, good evening.
Good
How
evening.
are you ladies
Thanks for
and
calling.
gentlemen doing?
All right.
Okay, you were pulling some punches there. What do you really feel about Georgia Tech? Come on, get it out now. What do you really feel about Tech, man?
I think they're struggling right now. They're a
Yeah,
bad
they're
team,
struggling.
and
Struggling?
but I
Oh,
won't
now
go so
come
far
on.
as to
Now, wait a
say
minute.
they have bad coaches because when you see the amount of talent they're putting on the field in a major college program, you know they don't match up in any position when they go into the game.
Okay, one more question. What was your opinion, not just of yesterday's Falcon 49er game, but the whole media blitz in general? It seemed as though the media made kind of maybe a little bit too much about the Deion Sanders, Andre Rison thing, which is, I really think, that's what really got them going because of all the talk that went back and forth, because you have to admit, every time they asked Rison a question, what was it about? Deion. Every time they asked Deion a question, what was it about? Rison. I mean, they probably got tired of hearing about that. That's what really got them going.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I think, first of all, maybe the Falcons may have gotten caught all into that hype. The only thing that San Francisco was apparently concerned about was to come down here and win the football game, which they did easily. I thought they dominated this game, and they dominated it with their defense. They created 6 turnovers, and Todd Kelly was just a man possessed. I mean, Mike Ken, who is a big-time pro veteran, may have just shown the world he's ready to retire. Todd Kelly is like a second or third year man out of Tennessee, and he just ran around him like Mike Ken was wearing cement shoes. Ken had no business blocking him.
Yeah, I think we have to defend our expertise here, Ty, because we've been saying all along that the Falcons aren't that good. They're not that good. You know, they compile, 4 wins against weak teams, and all the callers were calling in going, you guys are just the Falcons, and here they are 4-2 tied for first. And we said, well, let's wait and see. This is a tough part of the schedule. But for a Falcon fan, they're not that bad either. You know, I mean, the good news is they're not that bad. I mean, they got blown out. They weren't ready to play. You know, maybe they're not ready to play in that caliber of a game. But the fact is, for the first time in like 5 years, they're able to beat the weaker teams in the league. And so if they, like I said all along, if they can sweep the Saints, they've already swept the Rams, they still got a good shot at making the playoffs at 9-7. They can sneak in there in a wild card, which wouldn't shock me at all because, yeah, they have beaten some weak teams, but if they can continue to beat weak teams, then they may go to the playoffs. So this is the kind of game that they're not going to win, no matter what happens.
What do you think about L.A.? I mean,
The
how do you
Raiders?
think they're going to do
Well,
in
see, this
LA?
is a game. Now, see, here they are 4-3, and they're playing a 2-4 team. This is the kind of game, if they want to go to the playoffs, they have to win.
Right.
They have
And
to
Raiders
beat this game.
really need this game,
Yeah,
too.
and it's just like, okay, well, here they are. I mean,
Yeah.
this is more of a barometer game for the Falcons. You can't go up against the Cowboys or the 49ers or the Packers, you know, a really good team in the NFL. And judge
Our
whether...
friends in the back are laughing when Jay mentioned the Packers.
Okay, so, you know, I'm talking about, you can't measure yourself up against a good team like that. And I think if the Falcons continue to play good, continue to try hard, rally around their coach, they will win the games they're supposed to win. And I think the Raiders are favored, but this is the kind of game that will put the Falcons on track to make the playoffs if they can beat these teams with a losing record.
Well, I don't think the Falcons will make the playoffs, but I agree with the other items that you said. When you look at the Falcons, this is a team that can beat a bad team at home. They beat the Rams at home. They beat the Bucs at home. Okay, now they can beat bad teams on the road. They beat Washington on the road. They beat the Rams on the road. Now you have a good team coming in, Kansas City and San Francisco. They got dumped both times. Now they want to play a pretty good team on the road in the Raiders. I think they're going to lose that game. I don't think the Falcons are going to win a game against a quality opponent until I see them do it. And then they got a home game the following week against San Diego, a good team. So history has shown us this year they're going to lose that football game. They've shown that they can beat the bad teams, but when it comes to an average or good team, they're going to lose.
Well, I just think we talked last week with the big 49er game coming up. The way to beat the 49ers is to pressure the quarterback through the porous offensive line and run the ball at them, just slam it at them. And the teams that have given the 49ers a hard time, the Chiefs and the Eagles, both of them just kept the ball on the ground, you know what I mean, kept control of the game and put pressure on Young. I mean, he's real mobile, and people don't consider that. It's like, well, if we pressure him, he's just going to run around and complete the pass. That's not always the case. When you got a blindside rush coming or an offensive weakness in the offensive line, you can exploit that. And we said last week the Falcons could do neither one of those things. They can't pressure the quarterback. They don't have a pass rush and haven't had one for 5 years. And when was the last time they had a running attack? William Andrews, Gerald Riggs? It's like you can't beat a team like that without controlling the game.
Oh, we quickly have a phone call. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, how you guys doing?
All right.
The guy in the middle keeps talking about the Packers being a good team. I wonder what's going on with that.
They're up here Thursday night in a battle for the division against the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, that's my next point. I think the Vikings may be a dark horse for the Super Bowl this year. Why don't you guys talk about that?
Okay,
All
well, to tell you the truth, the Vikings are a good team. I think they match up against the Packers favorably in the quarterback position. Warren Moon's better than Favre, I think. And I think that their running back might be a little bit better. Allen, I think it is. And but other than that, the Packers have a better defense, and the Packers have a better offensive line. And so even though they traditionally do not play well on non-Sunday games and in domes, I think that the Packers, this is a fight for the division here. They've already beaten the Vikings once. That's why I mentioned the Packers.
Yeah, I think that this is a fight for the division. The Bears are tied in first place. They're 4-2 as well, but I just don't see the Bears there at the end of the year. I like Minnesota in this game, Jay. The reason being is that Minnesota's at home. I think that I think mistakes are going to determine this game. Whoever makes
Certainly.
the fewer mistakes here is going to win the football game. If both of them take care of the football, I like Minnesota being at home.
Yeah, Warren Moon has proven after the first game jitters that he got over. He can lead the team down the field. This will be an interesting game. I might watch this at Dirty Owls on Northside Drive with a couple of cold pitchers. I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. But speaking of Owls, do we have the class
Yeah,
tonight?
yeah,
yes,
we better.
Absolutely. On Monday,
Yeah.
Dirty Owls, Northside Drive. We'll be there. I'm going there.
The Monday night game, it's Kansas City against Denver, I think
Right.
it is. Yeah.
And Denver, of all things, is a 2-point favorite.
Well, they have to be because Kansas City hasn't won there in 11 years. Schottenheimer's 0-7 coaching at Mile High Stadium. And I did bring up this fact with the Colorado program. When teams travel to Colorado, Denver especially, and play in that Mile High atmosphere, if they're not used to the adjustment in the altitude, you just can't get wind. You'll see the game be close, then it looks like Denver's wearing them down. It's like you watch the game on TV, you're like, hey, what's going on here? Denver's not that good. Well, the other team's just tired. It's not that Denver's that good. So I think that's why Denver's favored. But Kansas City plays good pass defense, and this is going to be a good game, I think, tonight.
Well, Denver's defense has given up 30 points a game, and Kansas City hasn't scored a touchdown in 2 games. So what better medicine to come around than Wade Phillips and his Denver bunch playing defense against you? I think Kansas City is going to score some points tonight. And on the other hand, Kansas City only gives up an average of 16 points a game. The reason that they haven't won too many games in Mile High lately is because Joe Montana hadn't been there. Well, Montana hadn't been part of those 11 losses. Maybe he's been part of 1 or 2.
You think that's going to affect the game, Montana not being there?
Yeah. No, Montana being there.
Yeah, he
Being
could.
out.
I mean, but he's played in the last 2 games, and they haven't gotten a touchdown. I mean, Montana's supposed to be all-world, and this heroic quarterback, why can't he lead his team to a touchdown in 2 straight NFL games?
Right.
I think Neil Smith and Thomas, the linebacker out of Alabama, are really going to harass John Elway and try and force him to make some mistakes. I really think, though, with Denver's defense, I think Kansas City will score some points tonight.
Okay, well, you guys, I think we're about out of time. I want to thank the viewers out there for watching Press Box tonight, and I hope you tune in next week. Same time, same channel. Thank you. We'll see you next week.